That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Alright guys, I was not originally planning on making one of these videos just because I feel like they're overdone. I mean, pretty much everyone who starts a YouTube channel now, their first video they make is, hey, these players, go buy them low, they're undervalued. In reality, they don't really know what they're talking about. I know a lot of people I've at least watched and try to see if they can really gauge it. I mean, they don't know, and they're just trying to put out content that gets clicks, similar to how you see every single channel making a mock draft video, even though they're really not talking about anything. They're just sitting there jerking off, making a mock draft. Reality, that's what gets clicks. And I know this video, this topic does, but I got this request on Patreon through the Discord chat. If you want to join the Discord chat, completely free, down in the description below. And I thought that it wasn't necessarily going to be too interesting at first until I looked at the most recent Dynasty flock drafts to try to determine if there was actually still any significant values at this point. Because y'all know I love to make moves early on in the offseason. I love to go out there and draft the Kenny Galladay's high. I love to go out there and get Calvin Ridley in all of my leagues. But as soon as the offseason starts going, people kind of echo each other. So I was early. You like to be early on the players when they're buy lows. And at this point in the offseason, when we haven't had news for months, it's kind of hard to get an edge. So I didn't necessarily think that there would be any clear values at the moment. Yet I found two. So I'm going to talk about these two players and why I believe that they are undervalued in Dynasty leagues. Complete transparency, I don't even really own many of these players. So these are going to be guys that I don't think I'm necessarily pushing a narrative on. I think I'm very objective, and I think that this video is going to have a lot of useful content. So first, let's start it off with a guy that I loved coming into the NFL, but I gave up on him a little too soon, just like everyone else, and this is Devante Parker. Now, I know we've heard Devante Parker's name every year for about the past 4 or 5 years. If you've been playing Dynasty, I don't know if most of y'all been playing that long, but I started playing in 2014, and trust me, Devante Parker, when he came out, was seen as a stud. He was seen in the same, he was actually comparatively better than CeeDee Lamb as a prospect, and everyone was on Devante Parker, yet he lands in Miami, and Adam Gase kind of destroys him. We know as soon as he gets there, he's pretty much in the doghouse. We hear that day one, and he never really gets on the same page as Adam Gase. And he actually flashed throughout multiple games in every single season of his entire career. I mean, you would see a random Thursday night game, Devante Parker going out there, 6 catches, 180 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And all the Devante Parker truthers, including myself, run out to tell everyone, look, guys, he has the talent. He can do it. Regardless, it didn't necessarily matter because Adam Gase was in town. Yet Adam Gase leaves, Devante Parker blows up, and I'm not going to necessarily just attribute it to Adam Gase. There are definitely some other factors. I mean, it was a contract year. Devante Parker had to go out there, and this is a player that has been known to lack some work ethic. He's extremely talented, and we know that that's the hardest thing to gauge in Dynasty, is how are these players going to get to the NFL level, sign a massive rookie contract, and get an absurd amount of money, and then how are they going to transition to that lifestyle? I know if I was a 20-year-old going into the NFL, and someone handed me a $8 million sign-in bonus, I can tell you right now, I probably would stop working altogether. I'd probably lean back, eat some hot Cheetos, maybe go get some In-N-Out, and stop. And that's, I think, what Devante Parker did. He tried to rely on his talent, and that did not necessarily get him too far in the first portion of his career, but he figured it out last season. And I think many people are attributing this to the wrong statistic. A lot of people are looking at the splits without Preston Williams in the lineup and saying, hey guys, look, when Preston Williams is on the field, he is the wide receiver 1, Devante Parker is the wide receiver 2, and I think that's a little bit misleading. One, because the sample size was so small with Preston Williams on the field. Keep in mind, this is a player that I do like, but also we know that there were going back and forth between Josh Rosen and Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I think it's extremely safe to say at this point in his career that Josh Rosen is not an NFL caliber quarterback. At best, he is a backup quarterback at the NFL level, so it's really hard to gauge how a tanking team with a horrible quarterback was going to use their wide receivers, and I don't think we should necessarily look at the splits with Devante Parker and Preston Williams. I think we should be looking at the splits with Devante Parker and Ryan Fitzpatrick. So yes, Ryan Fitzpatrick played some games early on in the season, but he didn't get the volume just because Josh Rosen was on his heels stealing drives every once and again. But now we see going into 2020, Josh Rosen is completely out of there. Ryan Fitzpatrick is the starting quarterback, and this is what we love to see, because as soon as Ryan Fitzpatrick completely took over in 2019, Devante Parker went from being a wide receiver 3 to actually averaging 18.1 points per game in PPR leagues, and this put him as the wide receiver 6 in weeks 7 through 17 in terms of points per game. So it's a completely different story with Ryan Fitzpatrick under center compared to Josh Rosen. And this makes sense because Ryan Fitzpatrick is the guy like Jameis Winston. I mean, he's going to air it out. He does not care what the defense is showing him. He's going to go out there and try to make plays, and that's the kind of wide receiver Devante Parker is. Devante Parker is not a Cooper Kupp. He's not going to run short routes and try to get yards off the catch. Devante Parker is a baller. He's going to go down the field. He's going to win jump balls, and he's going to win with great athleticism. And now let's look at his current price and why I believe that he's still a value, even though his price has been going up all offseason. So right now in the FFPC redraft leagues, if you don't know what this is, it's data that I like to look at a lot for Dynasty leagues to try to gauge the upcoming year, because these are high stakes drafters. I mean, every draft here is like $350, like $5,000. So these guys, I'm not going to say every single one of them knows what they're doing, but it is significantly better data than if you're going to like Fantasy Football Calculator ADP at this point. I mean, if you're doing that, you have no idea what you're doing. So looking at these high stake redraft leagues, he's going around wide receiver 24, so a low end wide receiver 2, yet he's only 27. So I don't think his dynasty value should be drastically different than his redraft value, especially considering the situation that he looks for going into the future, with Tua Tagovailoa potentially becoming a star quarterback at the NFL level, and Devante Parker just signed that contract extension, which is going to keep him around in Miami for years to come. And if we go look at his dynasty value, I mean, right now he's going around wide receiver 36. So he's being drafted as a low-end wide receiver 3, just coming off a wide receiver 1 season where he actually sees his situation improve this offseason. So there's no reason for this sharp fall in value. And for some more current points, if you want to go out there and try to trade for him, he's currently going behind Jarvis Landry and Tyler Boyd in some dynasty startup drafts. I mean, these aren't mock drafts either. These aren't trash. These are real buy-in drafts that people are putting their money out there and going with their gut, and they are drafting Jarvis Landry and Tyler Boyd ahead of Devante Parker. Now, I know I talk about on this channel all the time, 7% of y'all are going to win your fantasy leagues. That's the math. 1 out of 12 is about 7 point something, some change percent. So we have to try to figure out these guys that have a high ceiling that are going to help us win our fantasy leagues. And I think the path for Devante Parker becoming that high-end wide receiver 1, or even a low-end wide receiver 1, because if he's that low-end wide receiver 1, he is returning more than enough value to help you get that title, is very simple. There's two things that have to happen, one of two things that have to happen. Ryan Fitzpatrick has to still have the ability. I mean, he's getting up there in age. Or Tua Tagovailoa comes back from his injury a little bit early and proves to be the quarterback that many people believe. I mean, I think both of these are very possible to happen. And I think that Devante Parker currently has league-winning potential, especially if you look at the other targets that are on his team, which only include Preston Williams, Mike Gesicki. And I mean, if you look at the running back situation, they have Jordan Howard, who's going to be getting the majority of the touches there, and Matt Breida. So yes, Matt Breida can catch the ball, but if Jordan Howard is on the field, we know that they're never looking to check down. They are only going to be going out there looking for Preston Williams, Mike Gesicki, Devante Parker. Devante Parker is the most talented wide receiver of the group. Expect him to win fantasy leagues in 2020 if he gets the chance. Now, let's go to another wide receiver that I don't think I own this player in more than one league out of my 15, 20 leagues at this point. And this is Will Fuller. I mean, Will Fuller, we all know the story. Y'all are probably rolling your eyes as I say this. He's just can't stay healthy. I mean, the guy is small, the guy is slight, and we knew that this was the concern coming out of college. The two things you heard with Will Fuller is, hey, he can't stay healthy, he has small hands, he's going to drop the ball, and yes, he's proven to do all of those things so far. Yet, when he's on the field, he's actually proven to be an elite NFL wide receiver. I know y'all are probably rolling your eyes when I say this, but Will Fuller with Deshaun Watson is just dynamite. There's no other way to say it, and going into 2020, Will Fuller is only 26 years old. I know it seems like he's been around forever, similar to Devante Parker, but this is just because he came into the NFL at such a young age. And in 2019, in 2018, 2017, let's look at these 3 seasons, because this is when Deshaun Watson was there, and this is going to be the most similar situation that Will Fuller is going to face in 2020. So in 2017, when Deshaun Watson came in, y'all know Deshaun Watson pretty much lit the league on fire. And Will Fuller with Deshaun Watson averaged about 15.5 fantasy points per game. And I couldn't find data exactly of points per game in 2017 through this specific split. So I just went and compared that points per game number to where it would have stacked up in 2019, and that would have put him as the wide receiver 17. So a mid wide receiver 2, and keep in mind, this is with DeAndre Hopkins soaking up about 25 to 30% of the targets in this offense. Now we go to 2018. Yes, I mean, obviously he's not playing a full season. That's not what Will Fuller does. I mean, Will Fuller is going to go out there and he's going to perform and he's going to have spike weeks, and that's what we're looking for. I think people who look at consistency and say, yeah, I mean, he's going to give me a wide receiver 1 week in week 5, but then in week 6, he's going to give me a wide receiver 4 week or a wide receiver 5 week. Guys, I'm telling you, I think I may have a better perspective on this just because of how many leagues I play in, and I see it average it out over the long run. It doesn't matter. I mean, if you are starting him every week, if you're able to at least slightly predict when he's going to have that spike week, you don't even have to be good at it. If you can just put him in your lineup every week, he's going to win you more weeks than he's going to lose you. And yes, he's occasionally going to lose you a week. But if you're filling your lineup with guys like a Tyler Boyd, who are always going to have consistent low-end wide receiver 2 numbers, you're pretty much banking on your opponent not winning the week. You're banking on him going out there and his wide receivers putting up duds, and that's not what Will Fuller is going to put you in terms of a fantasy situation. So in 2018, he was the wide receiver 20 in terms of points per game. 2019, this is where he really fell off, but you can't necessarily blame him just because of the situation in Houston. DeAndre Hopkins is one of those wide receivers that is a volume hog, and that's how they used him in the Houston Texans offense. And Will Fuller ended up being the wide receiver 40 in points per game in 2019. But we're going into 2020, and we're done looking at the past. Going into 2020, Will Fuller is currently pretty much the only starting wide receiver that was on the team last year. He has the chemistry with Deshaun Watson. We see Brandon Cooks coming in, and we know that Brandon Cooks' concussion history is not exactly ideal. He's coming in with a shortened offseason, so how long is it going to take him to really get involved in the offense? And the same thing with Randall Cobb. I mean, Randall Cobb, I think he's actually a decent value in Dynasty right now. He's going to be a guy that's going to provide you one of those floors, and just because there are so many targets to be had in this offense. But like I said with Devante Parker, what we are looking for is we are looking for guys that can potentially win our fantasy leagues. Only 7% of y'all are going to win your fantasy league, and we're trying to bump that number up to about 10 to 12%. We're just trying to get variance on our side, and Will Fuller has a path to winning fantasy leagues. Really, all he has to do is stay healthy 10 or more games. And I know that sounds dumb. I know that sounds like a very low bar, but I project that if Will Fuller can stay healthy throughout the entire season, I mean, Deshaun Watson's going to ball. There's no way around that. Even high-stakes drafters are still taking Deshaun Watson as a high-end QB1. Who is he throwing the ball to? There's no tight end on this team. The wide receivers are Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, Randall Cobb. We're playing in a shortened offseason where the guy on the team is going to have the advantage in terms of getting targets. And Will Fuller is not necessarily a guy that needs a wide receiver to draw attention away from himself. He's the guy that draws the attention. He's the guy that goes deep. He's the guy that's efficient with the targets he gets, and he's about to see a lot of them in 2020. So now let's look at where he's going in Dynasty. In my rows, I'm not going to look at any of the flock leagues because if you play in the flock leagues, they're best ball. So it's going to be a little bit more skewed towards getting Will Fuller. So I think that he's going to be priced up a little bit in those leagues, but I know the majority of the viewers on this channel play in standard Dynasty leagues. And in those leagues, my most recent draft, Will Fuller was going around the wide receiver 46. So a low-end wide receiver 4, high-end wide receiver 5. I mean, this is a guy that you don't even have to put in your flex spot every single week, but you're going up against the best team in your league. You're going up and you're saying, hey, I mean, I'm a 20-point underdog in this fantasy matchup. Let me throw Will Fuller in the flex. Let me see if he can provide that spike week and win me my week where I really wouldn't have a chance otherwise. So that's all I got for y'all, guys. Go out there. Go see what the price is on Devante Parker and Will Fuller. I will specifically say, I know a lot of people are kind of new to Dynasty. It's going to be harder to trade for a guy whose value is so low like Will Fuller if you approach the owner to do it straight up. A move that's a lot easier to make in terms of acquiring low-end targets and trades is you just have to make a package deal where you're offering a higher end wide receiver and you say, give me these two guys back, even though you may value Will Fuller closer to the guy that you are offering compared to your opponent. Now, that's all I got for you guys. Really hope you all enjoyed the video. Really hope you all got something from it. If you did, make sure you subscribe. New videos every single day. And yeah, have a great day.
be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.